We're here in Croke Park today with EirGrid for the launch of the GAA Community Heroes 2026. I'm joined by Eamon McGee of Donegal and Dalton of Kilkenny and Diarmuid the Rock O'Sullivan from Cork. We're going to be chatting all about volunteers, but before we get into the volunteers, let's take a look ahead maybe at the championship that we're currently in. Eamon, for yourself, who is the main contender for the All-Ireland for 2026? Are you going to say your own county?
No, I'm not. I'm going to be like a Kerry man, say anybody but my own county. So I still think, even though the league final, the result didn't go Kerry's way, I still think Kerry have more than enough. They're rightfully favourites there now, and if I was to pick one, if I was to pick numerical order, I'd probably go Kerry, Donegal, and Armagh.
Okay, how come your own county's not up there at first?
You just have to look at what Kerry have at their disposal. And we're all talking about the league final, but before that, we're all talking about that Kerry were, streets ahead. And I still think it's somewhere in the middle. They're still ahead, but they can be beaten. And I think that on their day, Kerry 5-6 points better than any team out there. And it's just about getting. They obviously have Damon Clifford and Paddy didn't play in the league final, so that's a big one. And once everybody's on field, once they're all, in a good chin, then Kerry are not going to be stopped.
And for you, over the last few years, I mean, Camogie is growing each and year. The spectators in the stand as well. For you, how do you see the championship going this year? Who do you think is up there with winning?
Well, the favourites would have to be Galway after a strong win at the weekend against Waterford in the league final. They are probably on paper the strongest team. They have a very strong defence, and teams tend to go play defensive against them, which puts their own attack in the back foot from the get-go. Closest to them, you'd be expecting Cork again, although they're after losing some players from last year's panel. So you'd have to say Galway, but it's hard to do back-to-back, as we've seen over the last 10-15 years. Cork are the only team that have managed to do it since Wexford's 3 in a row. So that will be possibly a challenge for Galway. But Colin Murray, I'm sure, will approach that the way any good manager should.
What about your own county? Where have they been over the last few years?
It's definitely a rebuild for Kilkenny at the minute. The new championship structure this year, it's split into 2 groups. So you have the 4 semi-finalists from last year in one group, and Kilkenny would be in the second group with the rest of the senior teams. I suppose from Kilkenny's point of view, and as a fan of Kilkenny supporter, I would be expecting them to top that group, get into a quarter-final, but that's easier said than done. So hopefully it's a rebuild, new management team in, and you'd be looking for a competitive championship from them.
Diarmuid, we've been gifted with the Munster Championship and the All-Ireland Championship over the last few years, but for you, what do you think this year? Who's number one? Who's up the steps of the Hogan?
I suppose there's so many variables, Valerie. Reigning champions Tipperary, I think there's very little talk about them, right? Liam Cahill is below there in Thurles every night preparing way, coming under the radar. I do believe that the winner of the All-Ireland will come out of Munster again, with the greatest respect to the Leinster Championship. I don't think they're quite at the level, because the competitiveness in Munster is huge, right? Albeit when you come out of it, you are a bit drained, you're that bit extra tired, because the competition is so hard. If you'd ask me for top 3, Limerick are probably really, let's be realistic, they haven't gone away. No. They have been hurt from the defeat to Dublin here last year. It was a sting in the tail, because if they're going to build a legacy on what they've had, or their legacy has to continue, that defeat will be a sting. And I think John Kiley knows that they'll have to remove that stain for this Limerick team to be remembered as one of the best over or a generational talented team, I suppose, since the competition started, really. So they have to get rid of that stain. I think there's only one way they can do it. It's here in July, climb the steps of the Hogan stand. Our own county will have a huge say. They have a lot to do, but they will have a huge say. They're probably the top 2 at the moment. I fancy Dublin for some reason to be in the shake-up in Leinster. I think they will cause a surprise. Not too many people will see them coming, but I think they've worked hard over the course of Division 1B. They've had impressive performances. They have some good players. They have some players back who previously weren't available to them. They will take beating in Leinster. I think they will be in a Leinster final, semi-final, definitely a Leinster final. So therefore, with the All-Ireland series, I think they will cause problems again.
For your own county in Cork, I mean, we've been so close over the last few years. I mean, what's it going to take? What's going on?
Yeah, look, I suppose you had the Clare game 2 years ago, you had the Tipperary game. They're gut-wrenching defeats. Like, they're sucker punches for the lads, because like all of us know at this side of the line here what it takes to get over the line, and it requires an incredible amount. You know, the Clare game slipped away for decisions that didn't go with them. I think the Tipperary game, it was no one can ever really explain, you know, what happened throughout the course of the second half. But they have a bit to do. Look, they're still competitive. The main concern is they're going to a gunfight every day. You know, we'll score 325, 326, but yet the opposition will get 330. You know, they need to tighten up. You can't be as loose as what they are defensively. Structurally, they seem to be a bit disorganised. Even go back to the league final again, structurally they're small, but disorganised. Yes, they have the players at the top end of the field to do the damage, but I think from 9 back, they really need to look at it structurally, how they can shut down space, how they can defend collectively, because at the moment, it seems to be my own individual battle, Robert Downey's own individual battle. Sean O'Donoghue it has to be a collective to be successful at that level. I think it has to be a collective, and that's where Cork need to make improvements.
We've spoken about the top teams, but for you, Eamon, is there anyone that you think they could be ones to watch now this year?
Probably gonna, with my Ulster bias on, go with Derry. I think Derry have not fulfilled their potential in terms of they lost their manager. You know, they kind of paying for him again for year after year, and you're there saying to them, what I felt with the Derry players is that, you know, your time is limited in the county game going, because there was such a good group there, and I think they've got to the stage now where they realise that they've got their house in order, and I think there'll be a kick in them. Now what that looks like, is it a run in Ulster or is it a run in All Ireland series? I don't know, but I think that Derry do have enough about them to spring a surprise on a few teams about them.
And for you, over the last years, the likes of Tipperary, you know, they've reached the semi-final 7, 8 years in a row and still can't get over the line. Could they be ones to watch, or have you someone else in mind?
Yeah, so Waterford and Tipperary are on that side of the group with Galway and Cork. Both teams would probably have to sneak a result. I won't say sneak, sorry. They'll have to get a result of Cork or Galway. That matchup between Waterford and Tip, that is a do or die for both of them. Both teams have to win that. I think Tip, over the last couple of years, they tend to play their games in the Rag. It's a small pitch, and then they go into knockout games in the likes of Nolan Park, Crow Park, and they're just, when you're put in that space and you're on your own beside your marker, it's a different kettle of fish completely. I think if I was Tip long term, I would try come out of the Rag for my championship games. It's like when you're training. Do you train with a championship slitter or do you train with a tennis ball? So why are you playing your first championship games in a smaller pitch when it comes to business end knockout? If you look at Tip over the last couple of years, all their results, big results against Galway, Cork, whoever, a lot of them have actually come in the Rag, and then they go to Nolan Park and they go to Crow Park and they fall short for whatever reason. I think that's really important to Tip. Whether that happens this year for all of their championship games, I'm not sure. But that's a big one for those two teams. But it really is, I suppose, status quo. It's Cork and Galway. It's hard to see past them. Or Tip and Waterford would probably need someone to do them a favour with one of those teams and then put in one almighty 60 minutes then in a final themselves.
The curtain raisers, how do you feel about it? I mean, it's obviously so beneficial to Camogie when it is on before the hurling, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think if you can get into those good pitches, wide pitches, the pitches you want to play in earlier on, so that when you get to knockout, you're back in the same size pitches. I think it's really important. And then you have the fans on top of that. It's, you know, support is everything, isn't it?
Darren, it must be, this is a tough question now when it comes to the hurling, like who's going to have a big year?
Wow, there's so much talent there. Like the Camogie, like the football, there's so many generational talents there. We're in an era where you can go and watch any game now and you come away and you cannot be but excited by the fact of going to a game to watch Gaelic football, Camogie, ladies football, whatever it is, because there's so many talented players there. I suppose what's key for Limerick is their half-back line. And I think what Kiley has done in putting Will O'Donoghue back centre back into that launch pad of a half-back line has allowed him to bring younger, quicker, more attacking forwards into the game for Limerick. So, you know, your Adam English, your Aidan O'Connors, these type of guys who will cause huge problems. So I think that has been a huge move for Limerick, putting him in there as your pillar with already incredibly decorated wing backs beside him. I think that's been a very, very shrewd move from him. Obviously in Cork, you're going to look to your likes, your Dara Fitzgibbons again. I think they'll have to have a big year. Tipperary, like the generational talents that are on McGrath's, right? Old heads beat young legs, right? And the way their brain thinks, Their head is thinking 10 times faster than my legs will ever go, or someone else's legs. So they're already identifying where the ball is going to be. Their generational talents. You throw young McCarthy in there, great player as well. So there's so many players to look forward to. It's going to be so exciting.
Yeah, we could keep going and
You keep going. You keep
and
going.
naming
You
a
go.
few.
You go down to the younger lads. Say the Barry Welch's in Cork. Your Diarmuid Stretches in Clare. There's so many talents coming through. It's going to be a fascinating championship.
It will be really fascinating. We are here today with EirGrid, the launch of the GAA Community Heroes for 2026, and it's all about volunteers. And we all know how important volunteers are in the GAA and in Camogie. But for yourself, Eamon, I mean, how important is it to have volunteers? Because that's what the GAA is all about.
100%. It's so important. Without volunteers and without that mentality, we wouldn't have a GAA. We should never forget that. In a world of money orientated world, that the ethos of volunteerism is so important to what the GAA is about. And I think that of all the things, there was a strive to maybe push for the semi-pro thing, semi-professional thing in terms of the players. I wouldn't have been agree with it, but of all the things that I want the GAA to, really push forward, is that the importance of the volunteers within each club.
And for Camogie, I can't stress how important the volunteers are, because they mightn't get as much, unfortunately, as the men do when it comes to the hurling and the football. So the volunteers really, really stand up when it comes to Camogie.
Yeah, and it's the whole way through. If the volunteers aren't there, everything just stops, and it starts from 5-6-year-olds being shown how to hold a hurl properly. So it's not even at the adult level. It really starts from the 6-year-olds having that advantage of having special people really volunteering in clubs around the country. But without them, everything just stops.
Diarmuid, from yourself and your career on the way up along, I mean, how important was it to have those volunteers around you?
Without volunteers, we wouldn't be sitting here. The tradition of the GAA has been built around volunteers. Everything that's good around the GAA has been built around volunteers. We all had mentors who were volunteers. We're all involved in clubs that have multiple volunteers. So without it, it's an integral part. The GAA cannot continue to move forward in the direction it can without volunteers. So without people putting their hand up, as Anne said there, for your under 5 or under 6 Camogie players, right through to your senior teams, unless we can keep developing these volunteers and keep whatever it is we need to do to keep bringing these people into the GAA. Look, we're a wonderful organisation, we're a wonderful society, right? I don't think you'll get it anywhere else in any other sport, because it's not money driven. Purely based on your passion and your love for what you do. So I think we need to keep encouraging as many people into the organisation that is the GAA as best we can. Does it require a certain amount of skill level or All-Ireland titles and Munster titles, Ulster titles, whatever it is? It doesn't. You can come into a role, you can learn, you can develop. You don't need to know anything about the game. A volunteer can be anything. It can, fill the water bottles, it can be put up the flags, it can be line the field, it can be whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be coaching aspect. We're players, so we really, really value all them things that are done for us, or were done for us throughout our career. Now, we reciprocate it back when we have the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, Eamon, for yourself, you've played the game and you do have medals in your pocket, but when it comes to being a volunteer, Jim mentioned, you don't need the medals, you don't need, you can just show up and show an interest, and that's important too. That shows the skills that they might bring as well.
Such a valid point, because I felt that there's been people that have nearly been scared off that, I don't have enough skills to get involved there, where I don't know enough about GAA, don't know enough about football, hurling, camogie, whatever it is. And the GAA should be doing more to welcome them into the tent and say, all you need to do is give your time here. Because when we think back to all the good volunteers that we all have, them characters in our clubs, if they didn't have the bravery just to go for it and commit it because they felt they weren't good enough, then we would have been all poor. We might not, I might not have even been playing, I might have taken up another sport. But I think it's so important that we get them, and then the GAA just says, you don't need to be Diarmuid O'Sullivan, you don't need to be Eamon McGee or Dalton or whatever. You can just come off the street first day in the GAA and you can be a good volunteer.
And what skills do they need? Do they need any? Can they just be interested?
I think they need, especially with Club GAA, you need resilience, because if you're supporting a team for 60, 80 years, your team is going to lose more than they're going to win, and that team needs you more when they're losing than when they're winning. So that to me is is the most important thing, resilience and blind loyalty, and to see that the most important things that happen in the community isn't what happens inside a pitch, it's actually what's happening off the pitch. So that to me is the biggest skill or a trait a volunteer has.
Diarmuid, what about yourself? A skill, a trait, maybe a characteristic of a volunteer?
For the biggest part, as Eamon said, is coming through the door. Be brave enough to come through the door. It's not necessarily about a skill set, but it's about wanting to be involved and be part of something. Time is precious to everyone. Don't get me wrong. And if you can give 1 or 2 hours a week, 3 hours, 4 hours, some people up to 10, 15, 20 hours, whatever it is, like that 1 or 2 hours can make a huge difference to someone's life going forward. You know, it might be just a case of that I will keep a young child involved because of the fact that I've made the effort. It's just turning up and wanting to be part of something that's bigger than yourself, because the GAA will always be bigger than any of us here. So even any volunteer, you know, we're in it because we want to be part of something. But just be brave enough to step across the lane. As I said, you don't have to have a skill level. You just break the mold, step in. You mightn't even be a GAA person, but just step in. You can contribute to your GAA club. You know, that's how we want.
I just come on there. I was just thinking as he was answering that not necessarily a skill, but a mindset where that selflessness. You know, I think there's a lot of, you know, when I put charitable in inverted commas there, acts being done because there's a camera on them, because people can see them. But you know, the real true volunteer is going out there where there's nobody seeing him. He goes down, he cleans up the dressing room. You know, she, you know, does the books for the club. They don't need someone to pat them on the back and say, well done, or for, you know, put it up on Facebook or Twitter and say, oh, look at me, and look for the likes. And I think if you have that selflessness, the desire to contribute to the club, to the organisation, then that is probably a good head start as well.
And what EirGrid are doing, this is where we will see these people come to light. They're looking for a GAA community hero. And how important is it for people maybe that if you're listening to this and you think, I know the perfect person to put forward for this, would you put them forward?
Yeah, absolutely. As the boys were saying there, it's not necessarily the people in front of the cameras already. It's the people that are in the background that are doing the thankless jobs, but the jobs that have to be done. So it is really important to have a think and nominate someone that maybe, you know, doesn't get mentioned all too much in a club or in a county. Bring them to the fore for well-deserved praise.
Yeah, and how much, Diarmuid, do you think it would mean to a volunteer to be put forward for something like this?
I think similar to us, it would be an All-Ireland medal.
Yeah.
You know, can you imagine if you've given 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years service, some people to their GAA club who have continuously to work in the background, no attention, no praise, no nothing, as the guy said there, be it do the books, wash the jerseys, line the field, whatever. No one ever gets a pat in the back for that. God, Paddy went out there and he lined the field to, geez, let's give Paddy a pat in the back. It's just expected. He doesn't expect any praise for it, but you know, it would be a badge of honour for them. It's their badge of honour to be nominated and for EirGrid to be able to promote this and give people who work diligently in the background for little or no thanks an opportunity to be part of a bigger stage. It's wonderful for them, and if you do know someone in your club who deserves that accolade, absolutely put them forward.
Okay, and I'll get the last question too. It would be massive recognition for anyone to even be suggested to be put forward, but even to go on and, you know, go all the way with this.
Yeah, it would be so nice when I see the faces there through the years. They would be so embarrassed to be getting this now, but it's so nice to be acknowledged. Doesn't matter what line of life you're in, it's so nice to be acknowledged and recognized for that there. And even though they wouldn't want it, there's still something inside them to take pride that at least people recognize what I've given to the organisation here.
Yeah, it's such a lovely campaign. Thank you so much for joining us, to Eamon and to Diarmuid. Thanks very much.